So now that we know what promise is and how it works, and we have a backend and we have content types and we have data that we can retrieve, let's actually go into the last part of our implementation for the backend, which is a custom route that allows us to have a user request for their own tasks and nobody else's, right? So the way we do this is that, well, we could do it in two ways, right? Way number one would be to go and override into our source API task controller task.js file. We have here our API, and in here we have our controller for our particular task. So what we can do here is you could override this. We could say, for example, hey, actually, I want to have something here that is passing the Strapi object, and this is going to be an object that is returning this particular function, and async find many is going to be our CTX, and this is, for example, what we get. And for now, we're just going to console.log CTX, right, which is our context. If I save this, right, and Strapi is restarting, there we go. And if I go and request our tasks, without the ID, I still get them. So maybe it's not find many, but it's find. It's one of them. It's either find or find many. There you go. So here, in fact, instead of returning the tasks, I say, hey, this is what's happening. There's a context that has a request, right? And I have a response, which is nothing. And in here, we have all the information that we may want from our request, including our query, including, all parameters and whatever we want. But ideally, what we want to do is we don't want to override this right now, because we may use this controller later on for something else. So instead of doing this, which would be like, just to be sure, if I wanted here, I could say, okay, gonna get my user, right, from the state. So CTX state, this is the same as saying const user equals ctx.state.user. This is the same thing, but I am getting the user part away from CTX state when I'm using these brackets, or here say just call it user. So I'm getting this, and I'm saying, okay, if there isn't a user, I'm just gonna go, CTX unauthorized, like you can't access those tasks, my dude, right? So here, since I don't have a user, this is a public request, right? I have unauthorized error. You can't access those tasks, my dude. This is an error, right? But if I have a user, I can say, okay, well, let's actually get the tasks. Now, Strapi 5, which is the one we're using here, it's newer. It's not one I've used before, right? So I am not very good at this, which is good because we're learning together. They basically still have the query engine API, which is the one that I use. So I could still write queries using this, and it's good. But now they're using this documents API. And I'm very intrigued by it. I want to learn more about it. So let's do this. I want to find many, right? And this is something I'll link as well. I want to find many documents matching a certain filter, right? So here, for example, I want to find this. So let's say const tasks equals, we get Strapi documents API task.task, right? Task and not tasks is what we're using, because if we recall, going back here in our content type builder, our singular API ID is task, plural is tasks. So back to here, we're using API task.task find many, and here we're going to pass some filters, right? And the filters we're going to pass have this format. Filters, name starts with. Now here, instead of name starts with, we're going to have our owner is going to be user.id. And then once we have all these tasks, we return them. Return ctx.send tasks. Fantastic. Now, if we go here and we request this again, we're just going to have null. There is nothing. We have not got a single task. Well, I'm unauthorized, to be fair. But if I remove this, right, and I run it, I hope it's not going to crash. Yeah, it crashes. That's another interesting error message, error code, 500. So 401 and 403 are different versions of unauthorized. 404 means I haven't found you. 500 means the server crashed. This should never happen. So it's happening because I'm forcing it to crash, basically. I'm telling it, hey, I don't have a user, but you should get the ID of the user I have. So obviously this is not gonna work. I'm not gonna, well, actually we're gonna go through with this, right? And I'm telling you for why. We're gonna go through with this because this is exactly what we need. This is our controller. This works. We're saying, hey, I'm getting the user from the request, ctx.state, right? And this is something that Strapi does automatically. If you make a request with a JWT, so that's an authentication token, and you send it to Strapi in the headers, Strapi will say, hey, this person is actually asking me for information. And this person is in my database, so I know who this person is. Now, Strapi then will say, okay, if there is no user, just you're unauthorized. But if not, get me my tasks. Get all the tasks where I am the owner of that task, and then send them back. So this is good. This is a way to do it. And we're going to use this way for now. We're going to rewrite this as a custom route in the next episode, so to speak, because I want you to know both ways of doing this thing, which is writing custom routes. Because this is not really custom. This is an override of the find method of this particular CRUD controller. So you also have an override for find one, you have an override for create, update, and delete. So all these things you can override them. But you can't have an extra one, for example, if you want to process payments, you can't do it from here. So you'll have to make a custom route. I need you to know both ways. Let's do it with this way first. Now, if you want to test it, the way to do it is to log into Strapi. And to do that, we need to create a user, and then we need for that user to log in. So I don't want to do this by code yet, because that's going to be really annoying to do in a single video. Let's actually just create a user here by hand, right? I'm just going to go into my content manager user. I'm just going to create a user. I'm just going to call it Gabe, and this is gabe@mail.com. Password is whatever. It's confirmed. It's not blocked. My role is authenticated, and I can now assign myself a task, which is complete crash course. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it because I want to see if the operations work correctly. So first of all, I need to log in. How do we log in Strapi? So to log in into Strapi, here we just go into the REST API and we log in. So REST API reference, this is blah, blah, blah. I can just log in and register, right? So not this. We can advanced features using plugins. There you go. The login flow is this. So we need to send a post request to this endpoint with the identifier, which is our email, and password, which is our password. So let's do that. Let's log in with our user. So let's create a new request and let's send it at this address with, it's a post request, not a get. So we need to change this. And in our body, we're just gonna send exactly what's here. So the identifier and the password. Boop, boop. And this is our email, which is gabe@mail.com. and this is the password, which is ASDDSA. If I send this, oh yeah, okay. If I send this, boom, I have logged in. See, post API auth local, and it's 200. 200 means okay. 400 means there's an error. And the error was that I had a comma here, and it made it an invalid JSON. But now we have this. Look at that. This is our JWT. This is what's actually identifying us inside the Strapi. So if I go in here and create a new request, and I get myself my tasks, right? So if I get my tasks from here and I send them, it says unauthorized. But if I go into my headers and I say authorization, and it's a bearer and then the token, so bearer, and I paste basically the JWT that I have, and I send it back, all of a sudden I'm forbidden. Aha, didn't see that coming, right? I'm forbidden. But that means that the request went through, right? Not only it went through, but it's a different problem with authorization, because it went through and it was correct. There is a user. So in here, let's close this down. In here, I'm past this, because it's not saying, oh, there is a user. It's just that this user is forbidden from accessing this route. So it's a different level of forbidding. This is saying I'm not authorized to get the data inside the route. 403 means you're not authorized to actually ask about this route. And how do we actually make it possible? Well, we go back into our settings. I've created this, have I not? I thought I did. Yeah, I did create it. Right, never mind. So if I go in my settings and roles, so in public, I need to remove the ability to find tasks, because I don't want people that don't have an account to be able to get the task. I want to go into authenticated, and here I say I want to be able to find and find one tasks, right? And this is also very critical, which is if somebody has an idea of a task, they can just read it, but since the IDs are so complicated, this is never going to happen. Coming back here now, all of a sudden, if I send a request, I have an empty array. This is all good. Now my tasks, I can get them, and it's empty. Like, I don't have any tasks. What if I assign myself a task? What if I go into my content manager, user, and I say, hey, I actually want to have this task assigned to my user, right? And I send it again, boom, all of a sudden, my tasks have this complete crash course. This is it, right? This is how we can create an override for a route that we already have. But how do we create a custom one? Well, we'll see it in the next update. Also, just a little note, I am keeping on updating GitHub, and you should do the same whenever you make a change. It's just I'm not including it every time because it gets tedious, I think. So just assume every time I close one of these videos that GitHub is getting updated, right? So I'll see you in the next section.